Okay, my name is Evan Tauscher with jamplay.com. Thanks for tuning in. This is week 7 of my series here, Classical Classics. We're going over a lot of the popular and developmental pieces in the classical guitar repertoire. Today I have the pleasure to share with you one of the first pieces I ever played on guitar, but also one of the most famous pieces in the classical guitar repertoire, and that is Capricho Arabe by Francisco Tárrega. So, a little bit about this piece. From the name, Capricho, it's like a whimsical improvisatory dance, an arabe of Arabic influence. And the subtitle is Serenata para Guitarra, so like a serenade for guitar. And that's really an important little bit of information there, because if it's a serenade, you can think of it, actually, I think it was described to me by the famous Spanish guitarist Pepe Romero, that it's sort of as if you have like a boy who is trying to catch the attention of a woman who is up high in the apartments, or playing from the ground, trying to capture her attention upon the window. So that's the sort of serenade we're trying to think about here, and that sort of reflects in this piece. You have really dramatic changes in mood, and from minor, maybe he's not catching your attention, and then it's, he realizes she stepped outside, and then it's a beautiful major melody. So this is a really popular piece because of a lot of reasons. It's beautiful, but also there's a lot of places that at least I misstepped when I first learned this piece many years ago, and that I've taught many times over the years. I've actually never performed it since that first time of learning it, which is strange. But I want to help you try to avoid those missteps, some of the common things that go wrong in this piece, just because it's a piece that a lot of people pick up earlier in their playing, even though it is quite difficult in some areas. But I'm going to try to simplify that for you. And as always, if you have any questions about what I'm saying, about the guitar in general, about my allergies, really anything, let me know in the comments. I'll be trying to get to them all at the end of this stream. So, you have the music in front of you here. It starts out with these 3 harmonics, right? This. Now, it's really important that these are clear like a bell. So you don't want to your finger here like this and have them mute out too fast. And you also don't really want to roll this. You'll hear some people start like that. It could be nice. Maybe the second time you'll see it happens again at measure 5. But the first time, I think it's best to just play it as a block chord. Now, how to most effectively get these harmonics? I mentioned it in my jam play course and my full course if you're interested in that. I've also mentioned it previously where we had some of these harmonics in previous ones of this Classical Classics course. So you can take a look there, but I'll go over it really quickly here. Now, my finger is not over the 7th fret where I would normally play a 7th fret note. It's actually over the metal bar. See, if I'm a little bit off of the bar here, you see it's really hard to get a clear note. But if I'm right over this metal bar at the 7th fret, it's quite easy. And in fact, you could start by just leaving your finger there to make sure you're in the right spot. You see, you might slide around. Okay, that's a spot, right? But it's not particularly loud. Now what you want to do is right after you pluck in the right hand, you take your hand off. That way, you're not dampening the strings at all. Like this. You might want to try just one string first. Maybe just the 6. That's an easy string to get it on. And don't feel like you have to really quickly yank it away from the strings, but just soon after plucking, take your hand off. Okay, so that'll get it. It's a really big announcement. It's like a bell ringing, right? Now, this next part, it's way up high, right? This 15th fret, this G, and we have a slur to that E. Now, after we play that harmonic, whatever finger we choose to use here, I think, might be pretty common to use your first finger, although I use my second. You want to use that time while that rings for 3 beats there. By sorry, before we go any further, this is in drop D. You should see that in your music there, but if not, you lower that 6th string to D so that it matches here. Right after you play that harmonic, like I was saying, you want to go ahead and prepare your fingers on that 15th and 12th fret so that you're not jumping there after you do this. You see, you're gonna end up missing the note or buzzing it like that. You want to be right there and ready so that when you're ready to play, it'll be right there and you don't have to panic for playing those high notes, which are sometimes hard to get to. So once you get here to play this note, it's really important to notice the line here, which is every single pair of notes are slurred here, right? So it's, right? Everyone is slurred. So that means it's always going to go strong to weak. But you don't want to make that weak note sound so weak that it's non-existent. There's 2 things to focus on here. One is that your pull-off is strong enough, right, so that you can actually hear that second note. But also, you don't want to pluck this first note too loud, because then it's impossible to get as loud as of a second note as you did the first. Like if I do this, it's just not very evident when you play that. It just sounds like a huge, huge fall in dynamics, right? You want to try to match it as best as possible. If I do this, it's really hard to match it, but a little quieter, those are really similar in volume. So that's a mistake I see a lot of players doing, is right from the beginning they get excited and they do this. And then you're like, whoa, what happened? Why did that just shoot off to the audience? So make sure you stay calm here and try not to overpower with any of these notes in the beginning. Okay, the other thing that really happens here, since every pair is slurred, these slurs will end up sounding like this, which is grouped, which you don't want. You don't want da-da, da-da, dee-da, da-da, dee-da, da-da. You want da-da, dee-da, da-da, dee-da, da-da, dee-da, right? Oops. Right, again. Okay, so that being said, we have that grouping now. How do we actually make sure it sounds like that? Well, practicing with a metronome. You can download one on your phone. There's one on Jamplay's website, I believe, anywhere. I'm just gonna set one here as a little test to like 74 beats per minute. And I'll show you how I work on this. 1 note per click, like this. Okay, and then what you do with that, for sake of time I won't do it here, but you slowly increase to that. So, eventually you might be at 124 and you do. Okay, and then you go on and on and on until you're sure that every single one of those lines up in time. Messy slurs are so hard to fix, and it's so common in this piece and virtually everything in the classical guitar repertoire, so watch out for that. Okay, one other thing to address right at the beginning. Of course, this opening segment's so important, so don't mind me spending a little bit of time on this. When we're playing this, it's so easy to hang on to this too long and then make this D there at measure 2 and that first beat, make this D sound like the downbeat, right? See, what that does, if you make that D too heavy and accented, it makes every single one of those 1 E and 2 E and come out way too much. So definitely still feel that the rhythm is 1 E and 1 E and 1 E and 1, right? 1 E and 1 E and 1 E and 1. Okay? So counting this out loud, playing it with a metronome, those are both really smart things to do from the beginning if you want to set yourself up to go in the right direction with this piece. And geez, that beginning really captures your attention. You have this fancy little harmonic and then beautiful, right? So next up, we have a lot of times you'll hear people play it like this. So, and play those last two E's, like going into measure 3 there. You'll hear people play it open string like this, right? Let's listen to that again. Okay, so I don't know if you could hear it in that way, but those E's are really bright compared to everything else we just did there. It really sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And actually, it is possible to make those low E's, those high E's work. But you have to treat them really carefully and move your hand further this way so that it matches everything. Remember, when we're playing here, the 8th fret, playing around here makes it sound really warm. But if we play an open string, it's a much brighter sound. So we have to adjust in our right hand to match different timbres and warmths on this on the guitar. Otherwise, it's just up to randomness. What if you're going to choose to play bright or warm? So bright is always in this direction. Warm is always in this direction. You can hear the difference. Right, and the difference here is this compared to. It's a weird way to end that little phrase. So I'm going to suggest the last beat of measure 2 there, we do 4, 2, 4, 1, 1. And also that allows us to play with a little bit of vibrato on that E. Now you might be asking about vibrato, classical vibrato. We're going to get to that a little bit later at measure 10, so stay tuned. I'm going to really break down vibrato for you. But for now, just know that's a really opportune spot to use vibrato. So is the very first note. Then. Okay, one thing to watch out for here. This is like that answer, right? The and then okay. One thing to watch out for here, a lot of times you'll hear this, which is a big space between this and that chord. Especially if you use this fingering or something. You're gonna have a really big gap between this and the resolution. So how do we avoid that? We play this as a bar, 3rd finger first on that B flat and on that D. Those are both on the 3rd fret. We play this E, and then we lift up these other fingers. Notice the freedom we have here. We can do this. We can move our left hand anywhere here as long as our 4th finger stays on that E. So reach your 1st finger to that 2nd fret and bar the 2nd fret. You can do a complete bar. Everything's down, ready to go. Before I'm even releasing this E. Actually, a really nice thing to do is if you roll this chord, you can wait until that 2nd string comes to go from here, just so that you really hear that melodic line. You don't want to hear this, right? It really kills the mood. So. Then important, we have a rest, a quarter rest there with a little squiggly. Then we have measure 5, this again. Now, we have to decide. We have the exact same thing happens again. Those four measures are the exact same. So, is it an echo? Is it, you could think of it like this. You could think of it an echo. Maybe you hear it from far away. Maybe that's what the lady up in the window actually hears. Or maybe it's the person who's playing for her playing it a little bit louder. Maybe he didn't want to disturb the whole neighborhood. But maybe the first time he was really shy a little. And then the second time. Right? That could be the second time. Or the second time could be an echo. Like, you're hearing it from a distance. See, I'm using this brighter sound playing further down here. Okay, so what's important here is that you have a plan, a story. It could be your own story. But if you're not convinced of something, the audience never will be. So that's really important to remember because occasionally you have like a really creative audience member that made up some sort of story about a piece that you would have never thought of. That does happen. But more often than not, audience members, whether it's a family member or a concert for 1,000 people, they really attach to the ideas that you put out there. You're the one that's there trying to take someone through an experience, or it just helps to plan these sort of things out and try to express something. So when you do something a second time exactly the same, you want something to be different about it. Okay, so we discussed the two things that could be. I like it being an echo. And if it's an echo when we're making it brighter, it's okay the second time to play those last notes open, like, I was saying. Because it matches the bright timbre. Okay, now we're at measure 9. Okay, this ascending bass line. Okay, a couple things about that. We are going open, 3, 1, 4, then we're sliding with this fourth finger to the B flat on the same string. So we're not going to lift up, and we're not going to do this. Right? We're always going to use that gliss to be able to connect the notes here. And it's a really expressive tool in this piece as well. Right? So, let's try something here. I want you to tell me in the comments maybe which way you like this top note being played, okay? This is way number 1. That's way number 1. Here's way number 2. Okay, this is way number 3. Okay, and now way number 4. Okay, what I just gave you an example of were 4 wildly different types of vibratos. I mentioned that we were going to get to vibrato, and we certainly are here. Now, what do we do? The first time, I play no vibrato at all. That highest note of the line has no sort of feeling to it because there's no vibrato, right? We're trying to imitate a vocal line or maybe a violin. And we got to have some vibrato in there. So otherwise it sounds really stale. It's a dotted quarter note there and we're just hanging out for no reason. So I'm going to go ahead and discard number 1 there. Number 2, I did a really fast vibrato and an immediate vibrato. I'll show you that again. Which maybe some of you might have preferred. Let me know which one you prefer in the comments, like I said. I'll be interested to see. But you know, that second one, there's something to it. It's beautiful, it's expressive. I could see it working. The only thing, it's a little bit weird to start a note with vibrato. Most of the time, string players, what you'll notice is they'll, like say a cellist, they'll start a note and then start the vibrato because we're letting the note bloom through the instrument. Remember, our whole instrument's vibrating and then the sound comes out. On the guitar, you can actually hear, if you play on yours, you're not going to be able to hear it through here likely, but the note actually gets louder without vibrato. I'm going to say about 3/4 of a second after you play the note. You hear it develop. Even on an electric guitar, steel string guitar, you're going to hear that. Listen really closely. It reaches its max volume a little later. So it's actually really nice to play the note and then add the vibrato, which is what I did in number 3. Oops, I missed the note. Okay? Now, in number 4, I played a really slow vibrato. Here's that again. Now, what's weird about that one to me is that it's too slow. It doesn't match the tempo of this piece. You know, maybe it's like this. So the way we do vibrato is we have to pick a subdivision of the actual tempo we're playing. So if it's okay, that's the quarter note. So if I did this, or which would be eighth notes, it's way too slow. So 16th notes would be just still kind of slow. And now I'm going to try 32nd notes, which would be, and that to me is the appropriate speed of that. Of that vibrato. Now, if you're trying to do vibrato at an exact subdivision of a quarter note for the first time, it's going to be really difficult. So you can actually practice this. You can set the metronome. I'm going to have it at 120 here. And, well, actually that's a bit fast. I'm going to go to 60, so half that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick a random note here. Here's D, the 7th fret of the 3rd string. And I'm going to start by going that way, making the note sharp, which is how all string players start their vibrato, by going sharper. And notice I'm doing these really annoyingly wide quarter note vibratos, right? And now let's try 8th note. So now let's try triplets. Triplet, 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 triplet. By now that finger is kind of hurting, so go ahead and move on to another one if you'd like. But now I'm going to do 16th note. So 1E and 2E and okay, so that's 16th notes. Now let's do 30 seconds. Or okay, so try practicing those different subdivisions with each finger you use, and then that way when you actually go to do vibrato, you're not just wildly swinging at the strings. By the way, this applies for electric guitar vibrato too. If you've all heard maybe some sort of like slow solo that then they go, right? It sounds like really amateur, very wide vibrato for no reason, just going super fast, or going, you know, for also no reason. Of course, there's some stylistic exceptions and special types of vibrato, you know, the circular one. But I digress. It's best if it matches the tempo you're playing at, and that just makes sense, right? You want it to match. So that's the plan here, is to not only match in tempo, but give it a second before starting that vibrato. Then we have a nice little scale here, a nice little scale run. So we have this, and what's important about this scale, which you'll see the fingerings there, what's important about this scale is that you have the downbeats in order here. So you'll see two groupings of 6 notes. That's starting on that C sharp. So this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Okay, it's a little tricky because that shift is before that next downbeat comes down. So make sure it's, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Okay? So practice that. And practice counting out loud too. It really does help. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Right where that A is, second beat of measure 11. So then 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 on this E again. Then we have a grouping of 8 notes there. So it doesn't really explicitly say in the original 4 notes and 4 note groupings, but you want to feel out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Not in the same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, and then 1. That doesn't make sense. So definitely make sure it feels like a grouping of 8. I'll give you an example playing this slow. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So you feel that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, after that, you have this B, right? And this slide to B. I'll do that one more time. So you have this. Now I normally play this with 1 and then slide up and do this little switch to my second finger. I kind of slide to the B with my first and then just set my second finger down, because I don't want to move all the way to my first finger and then have that slide sound to that next A, right? It sounds really bad, and it's a really gentle moment, a really subtle thing that you can do. So I do this. See to my second finger and then no squeak if you go 2 to 1. So really important, the number of times I've heard this and then an even louder A there. Oh geez, it happens a lot. This, remember, is the tension and then the resolution. Oh, it can be really, really quiet. So make sure that B flat is way louder, and then you relax that A, you release the A, and then boom. The most famous part of the piece. Okay, so about this part. That is the little introduction, the accompaniment. You could think of like a accordion player playing this. And then maybe a violin coming in. So, what to take away from this 2-instrument kind of feel is that you really want to play this part quiet. It's the accompaniment. So that this really sounds like the singer coming in singing his serenade. This is the real start of the melody, because everything else was just an introduction. This is where the actual melody starts, okay? So, really want to bring out this bass line. So try playing it individually like that. This is measure 13, now measure 14. And now the volume comes out with this vocal melody. And now notice these little 2-4-2s that we're doing. Those are little grace notes. It should not be, right? There should be little flickers, little ornaments. As David Russell said, famous classical guitarist, lives in Spain. He always says ornaments are not good unless they're beautiful, right? You might as well not put an ornament up on the tree unless it's a beautiful one. So if it's not beautiful, it doesn't serve its purpose. You got to make sure that it works. So make sure you feel really relaxed with this 2-4-2. And if that doesn't work, slide your 1 and 3 up there. See if you can do 1-3-1 and practice that little combination. And if it's not working there, make a little exercise out of it. Something like that. And then maybe when you come back to it tomorrow, it'll be a lot easier to make as a normal ornament. And these will keep on coming back in this piece, including there. This one was just a 4-1 pull off. Okay, now at measure 17 here, the third beat there, we're gonna move up to this E in 7th position, right? And I'm actually gonna bar it a little bit. So 3, 4, actually, no need to bar. 1, then 3, 4, 1 with this open A. Third finger here on this E, and then, okay? So now we're gonna play this F. That's a lot of really interesting color there, right? That chord is kind of unexpected. You kind of imagine it to be not. So, really cool moment. I recommend rolling that chord. We gotta be selective in this piece with what chords we decide to roll and what chords we to play as block, because there's so many chords. But I think that's a nice moment to accentuate and ornament that line with a rolled chord. So, our thumbs on that low D, we have an F on top. Now we catch this A, we've got a bit of a stretch here. You really don't want to let go of this E, because if you do, it sounds like this. Like there's this weird, strange, short note there. And remember, we're always trying to keep this line. And nothing changes here except we don't have that F there. Except, well, we do have an F, but it's up here. So it's sort of like this. So we don't want to have short notes in there. Holding this, we stretch to 2, 4, 2. Then B flat, so that's going to be on the 11th fret. Now, you can play this to stop all the crazy stretching. You do 1, 2, 4, but then you have to jump here. So I really like playing this 2, 3 here. So 1, 2, 3 on that C sharp, so that this fourth finger is free to be ready to go here. So it makes it a lot easier as long as you can handle that stretch. If not, don't worry, you're just gonna have to have a little bit more difficult time connecting the notes. It's really possible either way, but I suggest this. Now we're shifting our third finger down this E. An unexpected note there, that F sharp, bringing us into a major chord, or more like a dominant. Okay, so we're gonna lay down the bar chord here at measure 20, and I'm just going to play this dominant. Okay, moving up to that E flat, Now we have this. Okay, you're gonna hear, if you listen to recordings, a lot of the same thing here, and that is people doing this. You hear that, it's like that is a consequence of the chosen fingering, and we never want to make decisions in the music based on the fingering that we chose, unless you absolutely have to do that fingering. So, for instance, the decision we're having to make here, or lack of decision, is that every one of these chords is going to be short, or it's really hard to make long. It's possible, but it's going to sound a little bit short. Instead, what I suggest to do here is this, to make sure it's nice and connected like everything else in this piece, right? So 1, 3, 1, this part's the same, 1 and 3 here on this G and B flat, but then I'm going to keep my third finger here on the second string and slide up to this A and lay down a bar, which is actually not difficult to do this transition. And then second finger on this E, first finger on this G. That way we have this sound. Right? So it works a lot better in my opinion. I hope you enjoy that fingering. And by the way, I want to remind you again, if you have questions, please let me know. I'm going to be answering as many things as possible in this live stream right after I get done with this. And from anything from about the guitar to the piece to the style, please. It's always a lot of fun. So, yeah, we have this part. Then we have another one of these scale or really improvisatory line. It's like typically played with an accelerondo. Very much like the beginning of the piece, right? This. This. Except here we go. Instead. So here, again, it's really important that we don't do this. Right? We want it, if we do an accelerondo, we want it to not be a consequence of doing slurs. So keeping these slurs under control. Now into the minor section. Right, this is the same spot where I mentioned like the accordion type of sound earlier at measure 13. But now we have the minor version of it, which is really neat. Now we're right back into the melody again, which we've already done. And just like we were talking about in the introduction, if we're playing this part again, let's do it a little bit differently. Maybe make the ornaments a little quicker, make it a little brighter, or push through instead of taking as much time in rubato. That's what I tend to do, that latter explanation. This again. We have this minor section again, but this time we have a transition into the most heartwarming part of this piece, measure 26. Okay, so before we get any further, this is definitely a harder section that requires more stretches. If you've made it this far in a day, or this is the first time looking at your piece, you know, it's a good time to stop and just review that stuff and, you know, thank yourself for where you're already at. These types of things aren't meant to be mastered in a day. So, you know, take it slowly. Try to work on the beginning. Try to master small areas. You know, the reason why I see a lot of students get discouraged is when they put too much pressure on themselves, like they should be able to play all this stuff right away. Definitely no one does that. No one's able to play it right away. Even me, who I haven't played this piece in a very long time, it took me a little while to bring this back for you guys today. So, you know, it takes time. That being said, if you're feeling adventurous, let's check this out. We've got a little bit of time left here. You know, I wish I could get all the way through this piece, but it's going to be impossible. Like I said, I'm just going to try to save you some of the bad habits that we get into typically when we start this piece, and just a sort of feel of the interpretation here. So, now, it's basically like we have this melody, but now we're major, right? Now, I really like to play this here, because if you shift down here, it's difficult and it cuts the line a little bit. So if you can, right, we're able to keep this D ringing. Then we shift up to the 5th position. That's not too bad there, you know? So that's all in the bar, that C in the bass. So now we have D, right? Still in 5th position. Still in position, 5th position. Then we slide down to 3rd position. Then we have this like beautiful little turnaround, which I really like to take my time on. Right? You're trying to like impress someone with this. It's so juicy and romantic. You know, you have, or maybe even, that's pretty too, but maybe really quiet the second time. Then, whoa, we have a different character. 5th position, we have 4 here, B flat. I'll go through that. So, G here by borrowing that 5th fret. Then we have this G and E all in that bar already. B flat here with our 2nd finger. So this, again, it's a grace note. It's a da-da-da. It's not, right? So it's, and we come down into a bar here, so that we can catch this G sharp and E together. Or, no, never mind, that doesn't work. So, you could start with that bar already down. We have a little harmonic here at the 7th fret, 4th string. Now, we go through these little runs. D, B, there's so many ways to play this, but I'll show you how I do it. So it sounds like this. Okay, once again, so it's 4, pull off to that B flat, 2 on the 2nd string, 8th fret, then open E to shift us down here. Make sure whenever you have an open string, you use it to move your hand. And then now we have this really common, it's in so many different guitar pieces. So let's get good at this one. It's open A, and it's like we're barring, but we're actually going to set our 2nd finger on this C sharp, so that we can come off of the bar soon enough so that the open E is accessible. And now that we have second finger on that second string, that's what's going to catch this A up on the 10th fret of the second string. So it's like this. Oh, my bad. Here we go. Then we're on the first string. Again. And now we'll stop after this upcoming scale, but as you can see, we've got a really exciting scale here. It's just a chromatic scale starting on A. That's an octave up to A. Now we're gonna go up to another A. Into a new key where all the same musical things that we talked about are going to apply, and then it's a repeat back to the beginning and the piece ends. So let's just talk about this chromatic scale. It's like guitarists hold their breaths for this moment, and it's bad because we get stressed and then it starts going like this. And we get so mechanical and locked up there. So how do we avoid that? We play at a speed we can handle. So if that means starting it out really, really slow and accelerating accelerando through the whole thing, we can do that. Let's see how that works. Maybe we go like this. Right? That's really effective because we really build... Well, no. Right, it works if we build, and I'm doing this all index and middle right now. However, I usually use a technique that involves 3 fingers alternating A, M, I, or ring, middle, index, and that yields better results for me, but it's a little bit more difficult in the beginning. So I was just playing that with index and middle. Which I am not nearly as good as the other 3-finger way. But for right now, practice this with 2 fingers. And, you know, practicing this chromatic scale is like so applicable to like all classical guitar pieces because all the time you have chromatic scale runs. So, how to practice this? What you don't want to do is this. See if you can notice what I'm doing in my right hand. What I'm doing there is having really excessive motions. You really want to preserve your energy and make it all as efficient as possible. It'd be like trying to run a mile while high stepping. You know, it's really, really difficult. It's possible. You know, lots of people I'm sure can do it if you're really, really fit. But you're going to run so much faster if you train yourself to be efficient. So that's what we're going to do here. And the way that we can do that is by preparing each finger after the other. You could try it just with an open A string here. So after I play my index, I'm going to set my middle finger down on the string. After my middle finger plays, equally as fast I'm going to set that index finger down. See how that sounds? So you're going to practice this chromatic scale this way. And if you're constantly preparing the next finger as quick as possible, there's no way to be inefficient. And you can actually practice this up to pretty quick speeds. You see how you made each note really staccato? You know, you do that for a little while and then your actual speed of the chromatic scale, it gets way easier to speed it up faster. You'll also notice some people do this. But you know what, if you're doing a crescendo and you're already at this volume, then it gets really weak at the end, and this doesn't seem like a joyous place to arrive to. So I like keeping it all plugged. So we're not going to get into that section because we're just about running out of time here, and that's a whole nother animal. But all the same musical things apply. It's basically the same thing, just in a new key. And yeah, I hope this helps solve some of these questions that you might have about this piece. Certainly you hear it played in a ton of different ways. It's hard to find a good resource for it. And I hope I helped you avoid some common mistakes in here and shared with you some musical ideas that might help you. So definitely go ahead and leave a comment now if you haven't already with a question. Catch me the next one. Like I said, my name is Evan Tauscher. You can find me out there everywhere. Check out my course on jam play on their site and the previous classical classics that I've done. And I'll see you next week. Let's go ahead and get to some questions. Okay, and we are live. Awesome. Let me just make sure that everything is good here with the questions. And cool. All right, let's go ahead and get to some questions. If you haven't already here, go ahead and leave them because it is hard to get to them late. Now, someone asked, how advanced is this piece? Good question. You know, it is pretty advanced, but there are areas that you can hone in on here that are way less advanced. You know, if you want to just master one part of it, you know, you could think about going to like measure 13, for instance, and getting this. And just start with something like that. You know, at least for me in classical guitar, this was a really early piece for me, but I laugh when I say that a little bit because it is not really the correct course of action to go to like start with a piece like this. In fact, not to pitch myself here, but I wrote some pieces for pure beginners in my jam play course. That's a really good place to start. There's tons of method books out there, lots of way easier pieces. And good sources for etudes. Actually, the same composer, Francisco Tarrega, has a set of a lot of beginner pieces. So you could check out those types of things. Not that you're necessarily a beginner. You asked what level this is. Yeah, so take a look at individual sections. When it comes to things like scales, you could even simplify it. Instead of it being that long chromatic scale, you could just go. And you know, there's a lot of things about the essence of this piece in general that you can dive into as a beginner without feeling like, okay, I want to perform this in the next month or in the next 2 months. You know, there's a big separation there. So yeah, I would say there's the level of people who play this piece is usually people who've been playing guitar for at least a few years. So, you know, it's so arbitrary to say a number of years, a number of hours. It all depends how much you practice and the quality of your practice. And if you have good instruction out there, if you're just trying to do it yourself, it takes a lot longer. I've done that before. So we have another question here about my sleeve here, which a lot of us call an arm sock. During the hot months, which you're probably thinking it's November, but I'm in Florida right now. Instead of using our arms on the guitar where, you know, it's French polish, really nice polish, you'll see most classical guitarists using something as like an artificial sleeve so that, one, you don't ruin the polish, and two, so that your right arm is flexible. You know, when I do things like this line, and I want to do a dramatic change and move down here, it's really hard to do that if you have no arm sock on your arm, right? If you're here, your skin kind of grips the surface of guitars, you know? And that's good for some things. Maybe if you're playing a style where you're going to keep your right hand in the same position the entire time, it's really great. But, you know, most of the time when I'm performing, what am I saying most of the time? I mean, all the time when I'm performing, I'm using a long sleeve shirt. So you don't need something like an arm sleeve. Like, you know, you see like bikers wear this type of stuff. That's another place you see these types of socks. So yeah, when I'm performing, I'm almost always wearing a long sleeve shirt. Not only because, like, you know, the formality of it, but so you have something to slide your arm on. And a lot of times stages are cold. Once the lights turn on, it's different and you've been up there for a little while, but when you first get out there, the nerves are getting to you and it's a little bit of cold. Okay, so another common question I'm seeing here is just about these artificial, or these harmonics. I think I covered them well. It's at the beginning of it, but you just want to touch just a second on the strings and then lift off. One common mistake that you see people doing when trying these natural harmonics is that they'll come off too quick and you'll get a lot of the open string sound instead of catching the harmonic. So while you see me coming off the string really fast, it's actually not right at the same time. It's not necessary in the beginning. You can just start it, look, watch, pluck, left, pluck, left. You see, you're still getting the sound of this, even if I take it off a little bit later. The only thing is if you leave it on, it quickly dies. So hopefully that clears that up. Another question here, is the sock homemade? No, this is just a dress sock. But I do have a homemade arm sock that a friend of mine, his aunt or something, made for me. And you'll see a bunch of those kind of out there. You know, like I said, not a super necessary thing, but it does make the ease of playing a little bit easier. And I was mentioning, it's November here, but I'm in Florida right now, and it is still very hot. Cooling down today, though. Okay, so let's see. Are there any other questions here? Okay, I see one more about this measure 16 here, where we have this. This little slur. You know, these are just little ornamental things. If those are difficult for you right now, you can always do. You don't need to do, you know, if that's a little bit too difficult, take that and do it in different places. Maybe you could do, and make a little exercise out of that little ornament. It'll really help you apply these in the future. That way it's not, you know, you play the whole piece through and the only time you practice is when you hit those measures. Make an exercise. Maybe start your day with it. Or, you know, so that'll help. But if that's way beyond your level right now, you could always do, so just this A sharp, or B flat to the A, B flat, C. So just, right, just as beautiful. Of course, it's adds to do, but this is quite beautiful too. You know, you can make a lot of things work. Okay, I'm checking to see if there's any other questions. That looks like it. So thank you guys so much for watching. It's a beautiful piece. Like I said, take your time with it. It'll be worth it every bit. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week at the same time. Thanks.